Propaganda exists everywhere in the world, and it's almost always designed to do one thing: for the bigwigs to keep us little guys in line to their liking. Or something like that, anyway. But this propaganda can take on many different forms, and it's up to us to know what they are. So let's take a look at some of the most common types of propaganda out there. First up, let's talk about the big lie. As its name suggests, the idea is that if you tell a lie that's big enough and repeat it often enough, people will start to believe it. It's like the old saying, if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes truth. This one was a personal favorite of the Nazis. Next up is agenda setting. This is when the media decides what topics are important by covering them constantly. They're basically saying, hey you, yeah you, this is what you should be thinking about. And before you know it, everyone's talking about the same thing, whether it's the latest celebrity scandal or the impending doom of the planet. Thankfully, this one has two simple solutions: change the channel or turn off the TV. This next one you've probably seen but didn't know what it was called. Ever heard of transfer? No, not like a money transfer. This sneaky technique involves projecting positive or negative qualities of one person onto another. A good example of this is when a celebrity endorses a particular politician, and then a friend of yours who likes said celebrity says that you should vote for this candidate too. Or vice versa. Oh, that guy is liked by a terrible dictator. He must be evil. Hence why you should never base your choices on secondhand information. Here's one that you've no doubt seen constantly in today's world. Want to get people to join your side? Just scare the pants off of them. Appeal to fear paints a picture of the world where everything is terrible and only our ideology can save you. It's kind of like those old PSAs with frying eggs. This is your brain on dissent. Yikes. This one is undoubtedly one of the most infuriating propaganda techniques out there. Quotes out of context is when someone takes a quote and twists it to mean something completely different. Kind of like playing Mad Libs with reality. What he was actually saying when he said that was that he doesn't not support puppy murder. I bet at least some of you have heard something similar to that. This one is going to be familiar to a lot of you. The cult of personality is when a leader uses the media to create an idealized, heroic image of themselves. It's like they're saying, I'm not just a politician, I'm a rock star, a god among men, worship me! And thanks to the power of propaganda, people start to buy into it. Soon enough, they're wearing t-shirts with the leader's face and chanting their name at rallies. It's one thing to be a fanatic at a rock concert, but when it comes to somebody that makes choices that affect your daily life, never forget your critical thinking cap. Hey, do you like learning stuff that makes you think critically? If you do, we sure would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. I may sound totally disinterested, but I really want to get as many people critically thinking as I possibly can, and you subscribing and sharing this video really helps us do that. So thanks in advance. Now back to the video. This one is something politicians love to use. The plain folk technique is when a politician tries to convince you that they're just like you. They'll show up at a diner in a small town, roll up their sleeves, and start chatting with the locals. I'm just a regular Joe like you. I put my pants on one leg at a time, except my pants are made of gold and cost more than your car. Credit where it's due, some politicians do this to an extent, but they're the exceptions that prove the rule. If you've been on YouTube any amount of time, you've seen this one. Testimonials. This is when some famous or respected individual endorses a product or idea. It's like those commercials where a celeb says, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV, and I support Brush Away toothpaste. Suddenly, everyone's buying that toothpaste just because a famous person says it's good. Marketing at its finest, right? You're probably living under a rock if you haven't heard an example of this one. Demonizing the enemy is when propaganda is used to paint the opposing side as subhuman, evil, or immoral. Kinda like those old wartime posters that depict the enemy as monstrous, bloodthirsty beasts. They're not like us! They're barely even human! It's a tactic as old as time, and unfortunately, it's still being used today. Why can't we all just get along? But not all propaganda is doom and gloom. Sometimes it makes us feel good. That's where Euphoria comes in. This technique uses feel-good events like parades and celebrations to boost morale and make everything seem A-okay. Sure, there's a war going on, but look at all these shiny tanks and smiling children. Everything is fine! Whenever I hear that, I think of a certain meme. You know, I hate vague answers, but this next one drives me nuts. Intentional vagueness is when someone says something so vague and meaningless that it can be interpreted any way you want. You know those fortune cookies that say things like, "a great adventure awaits you," or "your hard work will pay off"? Sounds all warm and fuzzy, but what does it actually mean? This one's another personal favorite of leaders because it lets them make promises without actually committing to anything specific. But here's one that's become a problem, especially today. The bandwagon technique is when someone tries to convince you that everyone else is doing the same thing, so you should too. All the cool kids are wearing this brand of jeans. Don't you want to be cool? It's like peer pressure on a much bigger scale. And before you know it, you're wearing those jeans, even though they're uncomfortable and overpriced. Critical thinking cap, folks. These days, it feels like people are always trying to appeal to emotions. Glittering generalities is the use of emotionally appealing words that don't actually mean anything specific. It's like when a politician says they stand for freedom, justice, and the American way. It sounds great, but what does it actually mean? More surveillance? Less regulation? It's a way of getting people on board without actually saying anything of substance. And let's not forget scapegoating, another favorite of the ratsies. This is when all the blame for a problem is placed on one individual or group, distracting from the true issues at hand. "It's all the fault of those dang brown people," or "the youth these days are ruining everything." It's basically a way of avoiding responsibility and keeping people angry and divided, something we need a lot less of these days. If you've ever wondered why some people tend to use fancy language when explaining something, this is where obfuscation comes in. Its purpose is to make a message intentionally difficult to understand as a means of hiding the truth. It's like when a company's terms and conditions are written in such dense legalese that you need a law degree to understand what's going on. Or when a politician gives a long, convoluted answer to a simple question. The goal is to confuse and distort, so the real message gets lost in the noise. I don't know about you, but when I hear a politician doing this, I want to slap him across the face. Next up is the dreaded smear campaign. This is just an all-out attack on someone's reputation, using any means necessary. Rumors, half-truths, and outright lies are all fair game. It's like those movies where the mean girls in high school spread a mean rumor about a protagonist, and suddenly everyone believes it. Smear campaigns can ruin careers, relationships, and lives. It's a dirty tactic, but an unfortunately effective one. Really makes me wonder why it's always the negative stuff that we like to pay attention to. This next one is basically a smear campaign, but with a digital age upgrade. Firehosing is a propaganda technique where a flood of misinformation is unleashed rapidly across multiple channels. The goal is to overwhelm and confuse viewers, making it nearly impossible to distinguish truth from fiction. This is why I don't spend much time on social media. Next up is flag waving. This one was especially prevalent back in the day. It's all about playing on people's patriotism to justify an action or idea. Support our troops. Buy war bonds. Love your country? Then you better support this policy! It's a way of shutting down dissent by implying that if you don't agree, you're unpatriotic. I don't know about you, but in my book, being proud of one's country and questioning authority go hand in hand. This is another sneaky one, the unstated assumption. This is when an idea is repeatedly implied without being directly stated. It's like that old trick where someone says, "I'm not saying aliens built the pyramids, but..." and then proceeds to list all the reasons why aliens totally built the pyramids. By not directly stating the claim, they can avoid the burden of proof while still getting the idea out there. Basically like planting a seed in your brain and constantly watering it with assumptions. Anyone who's trying to appear authentic loves this one. The third-party technique is when information is presented as coming from a supposedly independent source to boost its credibility. Something like, "A recent study at the Independent Institute of Legitimate Research says..." But who funds that institute? What's their agenda? This technique preys on our trust in authority figures and experts, even when those experts might have ulterior motives, because everyone's got an angle at the end of the day. Finally, we come to Whataboutism. This is when someone responds to an accusation by making a counter-accusation, often with the goal of derailing the conversation. "Sure, our country may have its issues, but what about the problems in yours?" It's a way of avoiding accountability by shifting the focus elsewhere, because, apparently, two wrongs do make a right. You know, as long as you point them out quickly enough. And there you have it, folks. A quick rundown of some of the most well-known types of propaganda. If you learn anything from this video, it should be this: knowledge is power. By learning to recognize these techniques, we can start to build up a resistance to their influence. We learn to think critically, question authority, and seek out the truth for ourselves. So the next time you see media that makes you feel a certain way, take a step back and ask yourself, what techniques are being used here? Who benefits from me believing this message? Do I actually hate this person they're demonizing? Or am I just towing the line? But if you found this video helpful, be sure to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the dark underbelly of media manipulation. As always, guys, question everything, guard your mind, and I'll see you in the next video.